Malcolm, I'm so excited to be here with you today because we're going to talk about feminism. My views on it may be totally wrong. I might have been lied to all my life about what it meant. And now I'm asking myself, what if the real threat to women's freedom isn't patriarchy, but rather the matriarchy? And this is thanks to a random feminists lecture on Margaret Atwood that I fell down this disturbing rabbit hole. And I mean, at first I learned that apparently Margaret Atwood hates women. And I also learned that not satisfied with the hero's journey, some feminists created the heroine's journey, and it sucks. And then a bunch of feminist practices and campaigns apparently also just curtail women's freedom. Like when I looked at, well, like, what have feminists done? And I'm like, this is not good. This is not good for women. What do you do?
And I'll be bringing data as well, where we'll go over a number of studies that show that women don't like to work with other women, that women are much more likely to betray other women than men are. Everything bad, like women are women's worst enemy.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, let Malcolm and I pull you into this dark hole and ask you: can women actually be feminist in the end, or is subconscious intersexual competition women's undoing?
Well, I've heard it said before, and I completely agree with this sentiment, which is that feminism is not women versus men. Feminism is about low market value women against high market value women, or high market value women trying to trick their competition into becoming
Oppressing low market value. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like from classic literature to Instagram, women are not empowering women. They're just finding new ways to keep each other in check. And so, yeah, I'll share my findings. You share your notes. Let's explore the surprisingly misogynistic elements of feminism. Woo! So excited for this. But yeah, so I was, while cleaning up the other night, just looking for stuff on Audible Plus to listen to, and now they're doing lecture series apparently, and there was some lecture series on like the literary legacy of Margaret Atwood, and so many people name check her when criticizing us, where I'm like, okay, I need to understand this woman and what she stands for. So this is a good thing for me to spend my time listening to.
The fetish book, Handmaid's Tale.
The famous women's fetish novel, A Handmaid's Tale. So she's actually been a prolific author for a very long time. And she, among other things, she's written a lot of poetry. She's written many books, including A Handmaid's Tale.
No, hold on. I have to interject here for people who don't know what we're talking about. You can check out our video. Is this actually a fetish? Where it very clearly is for a lot of these women who are like dressing up and like going out.
A Handmaid's Tale, for context, is a dystopian fiction novel in which America becomes this like a place called Gilead, where women have no rights. They're not even allowed to read. And the few fertile women who are left are forced to sort of be bred by family. It's just gross and weird. And a lot of women seem to be really into it.
Oh no, please, conservative, tough military man, don't breed me in front of your jealous, high status wife. All of you need is me, and you can't survive without me. And I live this life of privilege, but I'm actually also super.
No. Okay. So like Margaret Atwood is so much deeper of a horrifying rabbit hole for me than I thought, like than just this surface fetish thing. Because I mean, it's easy enough. And when you look at any like fantasy, romantasy, any sort of romance novel, you're going to see stuff like this. I just thought that she was touching on that, that she accidentally managed to make basically women's erotic material that made them feel like they were reading highbrow political content and commentary, like, oh, I'm reading 1984, 50 Shades of Grey. So I thought it was that, but no, I think she just hates women. I mean, this is my theory, okay, just my opinion. But she wrote this alternate version of the Odyssey called the Penelopiad in 2005, which reframes several female characters from Homer's epic, most notably Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, and her 12 maids, and also to some extent the Helen of Troy. But you'd think that, like, okay, she's going to reframe them in some kind of like very empowering way. But no, in Homer's Odyssey, Penelope is the archetype of the loyal, long-suffering wife. She patiently waits Odysseus's return and resists hundreds of suitors and uses her wit to sort of keep them in check. And this is for a really long time. Like, I remember when reading the Odyssey for the first time being like, I can't believe she's doing this. Like, I mean, I almost feel like if Odysseus was at home and they were happily married, their kingdom would be less stable than it is right now. It's just really impressive. But Atwood's Penelope, no, I mean, like you'd think, okay, well, she's just going to make Penelope cooler, but no. She gives Penelope a direct voice. She narrates her story from the afterlife, and she's, reflecting on her life and her marriage and her legacy. And Penelope she's portrayed as clever, but also manipulative, deeply aware of her own powerlessness within a patriarchal society, shown as jealous, embittered, and sometimes ineffectual, especially regarding the fate of her mates who, were executed for being traitorous. So yeah, they just sort of frame her as this more like resentful,
I remember
powerless.
The original book. She's like playing all these political power games to prevent all of these suitors who are like trying to hook up with her.
Yeah.
And she's
like, constantly weaving, because she says she'll marry one of them when she finishes a tapestry, and she goes and unweaves it like each night. And there's all this other stuff going on.
She's being clever and manipulative and exactly like Odysseus. What was interesting is that Odysseus, she showed a very good and mirrored partner for Odysseus.
Yes.
She's undergoing a similar sort of challenge where she needs to do a trick to win this challenge and play against these impossible circumstances, but tied to what it would be to be a high value woman within the society of everybody wanting to marry you. And so in the original, she's an incredibly powerful figure.
I was like, oh, how could he possibly improve upon Penelope? And then she just made her worse. She just framed her as resentful and bitter and I'm powerless in this patriarchal. She had them all by the balls. I don't like anyway.
And then hold on. Yeah, this is what? This is okay, but you have
so much to go through. Well, let's keep going. So, because she also depicts Helen of Troy differently too. So, I mean, right, to remind those of you who haven't read the Odyssey or the Iliad, Helen was traditionally depicted as the ultimate beauty and the cause of the Trojan War, but she's reframed through Penelope's eyes in the Penelopiad as vain, manipulative, and ultimately mortal. Her beauty is shown to fade, and she no longer is the untouchable archetype. And Atwood uses Helen as a foil for Penelope. She highlights the rivalry and contrasts the perfect woman with the femme fatale, but demystifies both. So she takes these two women and just tears both down, but also throws in this theme of intersexual competition. So now he's taking these two women, now they're petty bitches. Thanks, Margaret Atwood. I really appreciate you reframing these women.
No, this is true in her books as well.
No, that's the thing, is when you come to think of it, in The Handmaid's Tale, it's not flattering toward women either, even though like feminists point to it all the time. Gilead is a product, at least in part, of female influencers like Serena Joy, who eventually becomes a wife. And many of the evil enforcers are women, like the aunts in this system. There's Aunt Lydia.
I see, remember, even the handmaids are real like bitches
to each other. Snitch on each other. They're unhinged.
You know, it doesn't matter what our faces look like, as long as we're fertile. You're bad.
Yeah, but not too bad. Otherwise, you get.
Guess what I did last night?
Ate your rations in silence and cried into your straw bed?
Yes, classic me.
Well, I had sex with a married couple.
Oh, so did I. Who would have guessed we'd be having three-ways in our 30s?
Like women in that they're either victims or villains. Which is like so.
But you told me what she made, like one character in the Odyssey like a prostitute or something, or
I think that and this was mentioned in the lecture, and I'm trying to find in the actual Penelopiad.
This was the Dia whatever
in the Penelopiad. No, it's so there was some. When I was listening to the lecture on this Audible Plus thing, the lecturer was talking about some like maybe other poem that Atwood had written in which like Circe isn't really a witch. Circe was a witch that like kind of Odysseus was stuck like sleeping with for a long time. But like, I think she reframed Circe as like the madame of a brothel instead. Like, okay, let's just take a powerful woman who was really cool and like goddess level, and let's just Make her a madame. Not anything against
No,
madames or
remove
anything.
her sexual agency. This
Yeah.
seems to be her thing with women, is removing women's sexual agency. I would bet is her key kink, because that's what she keeps doing with these other women.
Well, but I want to remove the whole king thing and just talk about how she apparently just really thinks poorly of women, and this is going to show up again and again. But here's another thing that came up in this lecture series that I was listening to, because this is just what triggered everything. It switches from only talking about Margaret Atwood to going on this whole diversion about the hero's journey, which this is, I think it's referred to as a meta myth. It's not like anyone discovered it. It's just a very common pattern in storytelling. This is something that one of our friends who got really, really good in media, like he was able to just instantly get like tons of money from ad revenue by being able to just generate tons and tons of views on stories, because he also was very good at identifying meta myths and just sort of modernizing them and like inserting trendy things in these meta myths that people love. And one of the most big meta myths is the hero's journey. So it's kind of like a 12 step process, but not the lame recovery kind, where the main character, the hero, starts out in his ordinary world. And then there's a call to adventure. He tries to refuse it. But then he meets some kind of mentor and he gets guidance, and then crosses the first threshold, and then, undergoes tests and finds allies and enemies. He approaches the innermost cave at one point. This is like the moment of peak tension. There's the ordeal followed by the reward, and then the road back, the resurrection, with some kind of maybe final test that symbolizes transformation. And then, return with the elixir. So the hero returns home and, bears a gift maybe of like knowledge or some new power or perspective, like whatever, they're just a better person. Right. And this is, I never ever thought of the hero's journey as being a gendered thing. Okay. Like common figures who are her female and went through the Mulan, Buffy Summers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, classic hero's journey. Wonder Woman, Sarah Connor from Terminator, even Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle, like a super feminine character, clearly goes through the hero's journey.
But they say a woman cannot go through the hero's journey. So what does the hero's journey look like for women?
Right. So, well, one of the people who popularized this concept of the hero's journey in a book was named Joseph Campbell. And he was a Jungian psychologist, so you already know this is going to go off the rails. He had a female student named Maureen Murdoch, and she developed because she thought the hero's journey just wasn't feminist enough, the concept of the heroine's journey. And once I describe it to you, you're going to be like, oh, so she thinks women suck. It sucks. But yeah, so she found that Campbell's description of the hero's journey, and therefore the entire meta myth, did not adequately reflect women's psycho-spiritual experiences. So she published this new framework in her 1990 book, The Heroine's Journey, Women's Quest for Wholeness. It's rooted in her therapy practice. So again, this is going to suck, with women in her belief that the traditional hero's journey was too focused on masculine outward quests, and it failed to address the internal cyclical and integrative nature of women's journeys. Like, I don't know what women like stewing at home.
That sounds so lame.
I know. And well, let's just, you don't even know how lame it is. So
okay.
Bad. Okay. So let's go through the 8 steps of the heroine's journey. There's the separation from the feminine. Okay. Because this is
the
important.
Separation from the feminine.
Right. This is for women. It's feminist. But step 1 is you got to separate from the feminine. The heroine rejects traditional feminine roles or her relationship with her mother. Because we're Jungian psychologists, okay? Often seeing them as weak or limiting, because being feminine is weak and limiting. This is our first premise. Oh, Maureen, step 2, identification with the masculine and gathering allies. She adopts masculine values and seeks success or recognition in a patriarchal world. Step 3, the road of trials. She experiences successes, but also confronts the limitations and emptiness of living solely by masculine principles. So we just have to show how like masculinity is horrible as well, but femininity is lame. Then she experiences spiritual aridity and death. The heroine, spiritually unfulfilled or lost, experiences a crisis. which is followed by initiation and descent to the goddess. She descends into her unconscious, because this is Jungian psychology, confronting the dark feminine and her own wounds, because this is also about trauma.
What's funny is this sounds like somebody like I don't want to interact with. Like, this sounds like a narrative that like if you indulged in it as a woman, you'd become an intolerable person to be around.
Yeah, but you'd also need lifelong therapy. So this explains why her practice was sustainable.
She's trying to create more practice for herself, is what you're saying.
So after falling into the dark feminine, which I'm assuming is like, you know, estrogen-induced deep depression, you have yearning to reconnect with the feminine. This is step 6. We're almost done. The heroine seeks to reclaim her feminine nature and heal the mother-daughter split, right? So, you know, you have to break from the mother, and then you have to heal. And then you heal with the mother-daughter split. You reconcile with your mother and the feminine and yourself. And then you integrate the masculine and the feminine. So the heroine achieves a balance, integrating both aspects of herself to become whole. What does that mean?
What stories does she argue use this?
I don't know any stories that use this.
Okay, you should ask an AI right now, like, what stories use the female hero's journey as laid out by X person? And while you do, I am going to go on a little tangent here where I am going to talk about how you can do classic heroes' journeys with women. You know, we've seen this multiple times. There's nothing that prevents a woman from living a hero's journey. But one of the things I found really interesting, and I commented on this on another episode, is Western media doesn't seem to be able to do women anymore because they always have to be like perfect and Mary Sue-like. And the one place where you can still see female characters really done well is in anime. And obviously, the recent one that went viral around like the girl in the wheelchair in anime, and everybody freaked out that a guy could love a girl in a wheelchair. No, you can't love disabled people. How dare you? But the example I always use that I think is really good at this is My Hero Academia, at presenting female characters as heroic without in any way undermining their femininity. You know, the two examples that I often use of this is one is, you know, Urame, the main character's love interest, or she is the more active player in the romance, you know, wanting him in sort of a very wholesome fashion, but she also, you know, shows her strength through when a very aggressive character is like fighting her at this first tournament, and all she can do is really levitate things is by you know, intentionally tanking and dodging attacks so that they blow up the set, and she's hiding all of the blocks she's been hiding in the sky, just lifting them up to drop them all down at once. And she still loses at the end of this, right? But it's shown, like, her femininity is shown both in the way that she combats this other character, you know, through patience and endurance and cunning within this, which aren't uniquely feminine traits, but they are not traits that undermine femininity. You don't see that and think that this woman's being like, you know, something that is less than woman, but also in how she deals with loss. Or in Pinky's character, who has this great scene where one of the male characters is reflecting on how he has in the past chickened out when it came to addressing, you know, villainous characters in society. And he is remembering a scene where 3 girls, this Pinky character and 2 of her friends, have this big villain who is like, okay, where is this place? I'm going to go and, you know, presumably do some horrible thing there. When the other girls are terrified, and she lies to him, tells him a direction, and he storms off. And then she immediately falls down and starts crying just due to the terror of the situation for her.
What? You're not gonna answer me?
Crap! Why aren't there ever any heroes patrolling at times like these?
It's a simple question.
Move! Come on!
Around that corner and then make a left at the big street! The agency's 2 kilometers away!
Thank you very much.
But what's shown in this is when she was on the edge, it wasn't that she wasn't unafraid. It wasn't that she like did some big, muscular thing to win. It was that she was willing to stand up for her friends and do something in the way that she had access to, but that this still took an emotional toll on her. It wasn't like, oh, and she, walked out cool as a cucumber and everything like that. And I think it's unfair in Western media that unfortunately many of the best like female heroes we got in the early days were female heroes through leaning into masculine qualities. So here I would think, Sarah Connor or, from Aliens, God, I forget her name, Ripley.
Ripley. So cool.
Great characters, but I think they set the unfortunate precedent that for female characters to be cool and heroic in Western media, they needed to be like good male characters instead of lean into traits that are extra feminine. Another character from My Hero Academia that I like in this respect is La Brava, where her power is that she powers up the individuals who she loves and makes them stronger. You repeatedly see this in anime, which is good depictions of the ways that you can lean into femininity and be a hero through femininity instead of, as a woman, be a hero through masculinity.
Brava's love will set me free. La Brava, grab the camera, frame it up right, can't look like amateurs. The mustache must look so glamorous, otherwise in the comments they will slander us. To be remembered, we can never be average. And my strength grows cause you feel so amorous. You are everything to me, you mean so much. You were there for me when everybody else would judge. And I know I promised you we would succeed. But that time is gone, and it's only but a dream.
Also, I want to be clear is you might hear this and think, well, then My Hero Academia and anime then must not know how to do more like masculine cool women or tomboy women, which is just absolutely not true. Even within My Hero Academia, you have characters like Rumi, who is a great subversion of the bunny girl character, who in all other things is like super sexualized. But here they're like, oh, she has a superpower of a bunny, which means like strong legs, which she uses to fight people. And she is the most aggressive of, I think, all of the characters in the entire series. There's this scene where she is fighting a villain and laughing while she's having her arm ripped off because she's just having so much fun fighting. Obviously, this is the one that I think is the hottest because, as I've mentioned, I think tomboys are hot. But yeah, you don't lose the ability to tell these sorts of stories when you tell stories that highlight women's femininity.
But when I asked Perplexity what famous female characters exemplify Maureen Murdoch's heroine's journey, it points to many of the same. It also, again, it points to Mulan. It points to Buffy Summers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It also points to Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games, who also totally follows a hero's journey format and acts in a very masculine way. I think a lot of this is just because, it points to Barbie from Barbie. I could see that. Maybe.
Yeah, I could see that, yeah.
So maybe Barbie. Okay.
Barbie is a good movie and very based, by the way. You should look at our episode on it. It is
and progressives love that conservatives think that it's based because they're wrong. It's one of those great Rorschach test movies.
For people who haven't seen that episode, you should, by the way, go back and watch it. But within the Barbie movie, when she comes to our world, the only place she finds a patriarchy, remember how she believes our world is a patriarchy from the books that she reads. Mm-hmm. She found those books in a high school bookstore. Her entire perception, and it's shown in our world that in our world, women actually are equal, and she struggles to see this because she developed an understanding of it by reading feminist literature.
Yeah. Anyway, before we move on from Maureen, I just want to point out and give her one little tiny concession that Joseph Campbell, who was one of the major popularizers of the hero's journey, or at least people who articulated it in more distinct ways, was also an asshole. Because here's what he said about her decision to make a heroine's journey, which I think there are lots of critiques that one can make of it, but his was, quote, "Women don't need to make the journey. In the whole mythological journey, the woman is there. All she has to do is realize she's the place that the people are trying to get to." End quote. It's just such an asshole thing to say. Like, no, women shouldn't go on the journey when like there are countless stories going all the way back to mythical times that show women go on the hero's journey. So I don't like, he is completely discredited as well. Screw him.
Jungian psychologist. So, not exactly the brightest fellow.
Clearly
anyway.
not. Yeah, no, they're all Jungian. Yeah, if they had us at Jungian psychologist. But like, I also, so after hearing just a little bit of this lecture, which I haven't finished yet, I'm sure there's going to be more in there that gets my blood pressure too high. I'm like, wait, so like, do feminists hate women? And so I look into, major feminist campaigns and movements and things that they've done. And there are a lot of feminist concepts or like movements, things that they've fought for that I think are really anti-women in that they either demean women or restrict their rights and freedoms. I mean, that I would call anti-feminist.
Okay, tell me more.
So they're protective rape labor laws. So like way back in the early feminist days, early feminist campaigns sometimes supported protective labor laws. They restricted women's work hours or barred them from certain jobs for their own protection. And this was obviously intended to shield women from exploitation, but the laws often reinforced the idea of women as weak and incapable or limited their economic independence and reinforced patriarchal norms. Plus, I really think when it comes down to it, like your ability to do a job, like masculine and feminine traits, or your sex is sort of manifested on a spectrum. There are men who have higher levels of estrogen, natal men, than women, and vice versa. There are women who are like super beefy and strong and can work incredibly long hours and be a very successful Marine. And there are men who can't make the cut in the Marines, right?
So like, we're still seeing this. Like, so there was a law recently in Sweden. I don't know if you heard about this, where Sweden banned men from watching OnlyFans. So you cannot watch OnlyFans in Sweden, but it didn't ban women from creating on OnlyFans. So it's like, this is clearly bad. The women, you guys can continue to be exploited, of course. The men, you shouldn't be on OnlyFans. We should only have like men in Africa watching women on Sweden and OnlyFans or whatever.
And Americans mostly, probably. I think OnlyFans is biggest in America. But like my larger point though is that people should be, like with race, considered by the content of their character, by meritocracy, by their ability to perform the job safely, and not by gender. And you are restricting women's freedom by promoting campaigns like this. But like, to get to the OnlyFans thing, that's the other really big thing that feminism is. They've all these anti-sex and anti-pornography campaigns. Especially, this is associated more with the more recent second wave feminism, like people like Anna Dworkin or Catherine McKinnon. They campaigned against pornography, sex work. They argued that these industries were inherently exploitative. And I mean, these campaigns infantilize women. They deny their agency. They contribute to the stigmatization of women who choose to work in these fields. And they also echo patriarchal attitudes about female sexuality and autonomy. Like, we know people who have worked in sex work and who find it way better than other professional alternatives that they had access to at the time. Like, it's just insane to me. And also, we know from when we talked about this extensively in various episodes that, when you ban pornography in an area
for sex work, we're not like, we have a nuanced view on when it makes sense and when it doesn't make sense.
100%. But also, like, banning pornography in an area can increase sexual assault in that area. Like, so do you want women to get sexually assaulted, or do you want to allow them to watch like a little bit of porn? Like, I just, like, again, this is making women more endangered, less empowered, more restricted in their professional options. Women choose many professional lines for a reason. I mean, OnlyFans. You choose to do OnlyFans because often that is a lot easier than leaving your house or doing something. You can stay home if you're a stay-at-home parent. If you're taking care of an elderly parent, you can be home with them and still make money if you're good at it. So yeah, I just like, okay, again, we're restricting freedom. And then, like, more broadly, this, like, there's this concept of the personal is political and gender essentialism. So one of the mantras of the second wave is that the personal is the political, and that sometimes led to the policing of women's personal choices, like marriage or motherhood or femininity. So women who chose traditional roles, and I see this on YouTube all the time, are being criticized as being complicit with their own oppression. Like, oh, she's a trad wife, like she's, feeding into this. And that in itself, I think, is misogynistic. It devalues women's autonomy and diversity of experience. It's saying, oh, yeah, your choice is evil. It's not valid. You're not allowed to make that choice. You're not, you're not a real woman or a real feminist or whatever. And like this whole point, like I grew up believing that feminism was women should be allowed to do whatever they can based on their merit and ability, and men should be allowed to do whatever they can based on their merit and ability. And that's it. Like not special privilege.
This is that women should be put in a cage. Like, and this is why when people are like, are you a feminist? And it's like, have you seen what the feminists did?
Yeah, like now when people ask me, I mean, because before I was kind of in ignorance about it. I was not sure. I knew there's a lot that I needed to look into. And now I look into it and I'm like, oh,
the majority of feminist movements have been malevolent to the intention of the female. We point out that when the suffrage movement happened, the majority of women were anti-suffragettes, to the point where mainstream suffragettes like Susan B. Anthony said that she didn't want polling done of local women to see what they wanted on the subject, because she knew what the answer would be. So she didn't want women to vote when it could hurt her interests.
It's unhinged. It's unhinged.
Now, if you want to go into other studies on this, there was a study, the Queen Bee phenomenon in academia 15 years after. Does it still exist? And if so, why?
Okay.
So this is a phenomenon where women attempt to sabotage other women's work within an environment. And so this was done in 2021, so recently. So it's like, is this still a phenomenon, or was this a mark of something in the past, like misogyny or patriarchy?
Okay.
Published in the British Journal of Social Psychology, with samples of 462 and 339 academic professionals. The research found that advanced career female academics are more likely than their male counterparts to underestimate the career commitment of women at the beginning of their academic careers, such as PhD candidates. This behavior can manifest as withholding mentorship or expressing stereotype views, potentially undermining junior women's advancement. Well, definitely undermining junior women's advancement. So this is what's interesting is, as time has gone on, you could be like, well, as we've dismantled the patriarchy, or where is the patriarchy least existence in like academia? That's the most monocultural place.
Yeah.
This phenomenon is getting worse. The more feminist the place gets, the more anti-women women get.
Well, I think again, like my conclusion here is that this is subconscious. It's certainly not intentional. Intersexual competition. I mean, there's also like more innocuous and theoretical research, like the study titled "Off with Her Hair: Intersexuality or Intersexually Competitive Women Advise Other Women to Cut More Hair Off," authored by Danielle Solikowski, and it was published in the Journal of Personality and Individual Differences in 2024. So just
well, I mean, this is what you see as feminists, like encouraging women not to become not fat. Like,
yeah. Well, the research investigated whether intersexual competition among women could manifest as subtle sabotage through appearance advice in a hypothetical salon scenario, and basically across two studies where women were asked how much hair they would recommend hypothetical clients whose attractiveness and hair condition varied to cut off. And the results showed that women who reported higher levels of intersexual competitiveness were more likely to recommend that clients, especially those with healthy hair who wanted to keep it long, cut off more than requested. And this tendency was most pronounced when the client was of similar attractiveness to the participant, which suggests this form of like horizontal competition, which is, I think, interesting.
That's really fascinating.
Where the individual target rivals perceived as being on the same level as themselves. So you're really like, okay, well, we're in the same league as the men that we're probably targeting, so I really have to take you out. And the authors interpret this as a possible subconscious act of intersexual competition, which I think is also playing out in the realm of feminism. And this suggests that subtle forms of sabotage, like recommending a shorter haircut than desired, just may be a default competitive response among some women, even when there's no obvious rivalry. And so there is some resource.
There's a big study on this, like wanting a woman boss and women wanting male bosses. And not only did you see in some studies women wanting less, I remember in one study, not a single woman would have preferred.
Well, yeah, because I think intuitively they realize the threat here, that like there's just, and it's not our fault, but I do think like
it is. Yeah, women are biologically terrible. Like,
well, no, but I don't know if I want to say it's not our fault, because I have extremely low levels of estrogen. I mean, like I've said before, when I am in between pregnancies, I have to take the same level of estrogen that a natal male trans woman has to take just to be female enough.
Any inter-woman competition? I mean, do you?
No, I really don't feel it, and it really stresses me out. And actually research has shown that intersexual competition is influenced by personality, like lower agreeableness and higher neuroticism, but also hormonal fluctuations. So higher estradiol levels in premenopausal women, so these are like pretty much most of the women we're interacting with, are linked to more appearance-based competition. So this tendency for intersexual competition persists across lifespan, but the motives may shift based on like hormonal levels, like where a woman is in her cycle, if she's a high estrogen woman. Plus also, et al. In 2014 showed that when women are primed with perceptions of mate or resource scarcity, they're more willing to use both.
What does that look like?
I think if you
remember
feel
it
like,
was one that talked about like the number of women to men on college campuses.
yeah, they're willing to use both indirect and direct aggression against same-sex rivals. But then there's even more. There's a qualitative study by B. Brock that documented women's experiences for sabotaging other women in the workplace. Maybe you saw that one, including withholding information, spreading rumors, submitting false reports, and undermining professional competence. And they were driven by insecurity, jealousy, or resentment toward women who are perceived as breaking traditional roles or achieving success.
But this explains why conservative women are so much less bitchy to other women than progressive women are.
Why?
Because there are fewer women in conservative spaces, so they feel less mate scared.
I guess they're just, it's not being triggered as much.
In the United States, for example, there is one progressive man for every 2 progressive women. Like that's going to make it very like women in progressive spaces who are more likely to be feminists are also going to be more likely to be mate scarce and have this mate scarcity priming, which is going to trigger more aggression to other women, which in part might explain the incredibly low levels of mental health in progressive spaces.
It can also be, so there is one study from 2018 by Keyes and Bogle that demonstrated women exposed to a provocatively dressed female Confederate reported higher levels of intersexual competition and were more likely to engage in indirect aggression, such as negative body language, derogatory comments, and on the rival's appearance and sexuality. And maybe in conservative spaces, women just aren't really exposed to many provocatively dressed women. So they're just, that also isn't triggered. Like even among their own compatriots, they're seeing less of that behavior, perhaps. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, women also have been found, like by researchers, to more frequently use derogatory tactics like slut shaming to make rivals appear less desirable to men, like, you know, spreading rumors, questioning fidelity. This is a woman thing. But I wanted to point out
men don't really do this with other men that frequently.
Yeah, they don't. They really don't.
If a man did do this, what's interesting is how normally, if it was in like male bro circles, you found out that one man had been down talking another man to try to sleep with a girl, that guy would be incredibly socially punished.
He'd have to defend. Yeah, in the past that would lead to a duel. In the present, it could lead to a fist fight.
Circumstances, she wouldn't be punished that much. It would be like, well, of course she did. She wanted to sleep with him, right? You know, like this is just girls being girls. But the queen bee phenomenon I talked about, you know, this has been confirmed in a number of studies, recent ones as well. Rocha, Grangero et al. 2024, Elmans et al. 24. Just over and over again, you see women in positions of power will attempt to sabotage women with less power than themselves. And in Goldberg, 1968, Are Women Prejudiced Against Women? We also see, you know, high rates of prejudice of other women within women.
Yeah, and that's why I'm a little bit more dubious if this is a like low value women trying to gain status thing and more of a higher value women keeping lower value women down. Because also, hat tip to this YouTuber named Michelle McDaniel. I love her YouTube videos, and she did one recently on like haze influencers who are thin. And I'm going to share with you. Hold on, you've got to watch this.
Okay, I'm not arguing that there aren't haze influencers.
No, but you've got to watch.
The majority of haze influencers are fat.
But I know, but there are also now thin, attractive women. They're like, there's this woman on TikTok. I'm going to share the video with you. Her name is Chloe. She has 2.7 million followers. She is thin. She is attractive. She clearly cares about her appearance. She has makeup and probably false eyelashes on. And she talks about how the idea of being thin is being sold to all of us in one way or another. That being fat means you're a living resistance.
I genuinely believe that in this glorious year of 2025, it is borderline radical and at the very least an embodied political statement to be fat, chubby, plus-sized, curvaceous, whatever you want to call it. And so I say that being fat, for example, is an embodied political statement because you are living resistance against the culture, against this idea that to be valued, to be beautiful, to be seen, to be treated like a normal human being, you must look a certain way. I also want to remind people that your body keeps the score. If you are losing weight in a way that is unhealthy and unnatural to you, it's not just your body itself that is going to suffer, but your brain, your mind, your mental health. Don't harm yourself trying to look like that. Whip out your woke card. Stay fat, princess.
She implies that losing weight is going to hurt your self-esteem, your body, and your mind. And that losing weight, quote, won't just make your body and mind weaker, it'll make you weaker on the whole. And she finishes by saying, stay fat, princess.
Wait, hold on, Simone, I'm not disagreeing that these people exist, but the majority of feminist influencers, the majority of feminist thinkers look like she-cows.
Look at these venomous harridans. They went to university. Yes, overeducation leads to ugliness, premature aging, and beard growth.
Like,
yeah, but I think it's a lot harder for them to get a platform. When you're a hot woman,
well,
you get a
so
lot.
then what this says is that there are more low value market women. If it's harder for them to get a platform, yet they make up the majority of influencers in this space, it implies that feminism is actually a majority low market value women trying to sabotage high market value women.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe it's also crabs in the bucket trying to pull them down thing. I mean, there's also this thing though that I had to learn about because it didn't make sense to me, maybe as like an autistic young lady. I mean, first, like Chloe's saying this though, it makes me feel like it's like a billionaire talking about how poor people shouldn't try to better their financial circumstances because that would feed into the capitalist conspiracy. But also there's this pervasive behavior among women where you do this thing where you talk about like, oh, I hate my hair. And then everyone else is supposed to be like, no, your hair is beautiful. But even if it isn't, like, you just have to lie to them. And like, you kind of don't want them to make their hair better because then, you know, they're going to be even prettier than you and you're going to feel even worse about yourself. And it's like that Mean Girl scene. Have you seen like where they're—
By the way, I would note, just in case anybody doesn't know that what she's saying is wrong, being fat has pretty negative effects on your brain, and you should like—
No, you should really lose weight if you're fat. This Chloe is unhinged, but I just sent you the Mean Girls reference. I also sent you the clip from Chloe, but you can see the Mean Girls reference to like what I'm talking about here.
I used to think there was just fat and skinny. Apparently there's a lot of things that can be wrong on your body.
My hairline is so weird. My pores are huge. My nail beds suck.
So
I think in the end, like feminism, like it has failed. Okay, a lot of progress has been made, but I think that it's been made by society on the whole.
For intersexual sexual competition among women.
Yeah.
And it might have always been about that, right? You know?
And I think it's like the tale of the scorpion and the frog.
Well, no, but it was certainly never about uplifting women. If even Susan B. Anthony didn't want women being polled about how much they wanted women to vote, because she didn't want women's voice heard on that subject.
Yeah, I mean, my general intuition on this now is that like women gained rights and women do gain rights in various societies because ultimately it is the most economically productive and most logical and most efficient thing to do.
You mean so the corpos can use them?
Well, whatever, just because it makes more things work better. It makes more sense. People prosper and flourish more, both men and women, when there is less systematic disempowerment of certain segments of society. And this applies to race, this applies to gender, this applies to all like stupid, arbitrary, you're not allowed to do this things. You know, like it's weird that like I think until like 1970, women couldn't even apply for a credit card without their husband. Like,
yeah,
well, stupid. That's so stupid. So but I don't think that's
actually, hold on. That's not stupid at all. That law makes a ton of sense. Think about it.
Why?
Okay. Because what you're not considering is when you're married, you have a joint debt, right? And so it would make sense to me that neither a husband nor wife should be able to apply to a credit card without their partner if they are taking out debt in their partner's name, which is what you are.
No, that's not what they were doing. This is a woman in her own name on her own without any association. Because the problem with unmarried women, unmarried women could not apply for credit cards.
Single unmarried women. That's very different than a married woman not being able to take out a credit card without her husband. I think they may be pulling a trick here.
No. It was you needed to have
I'll
a
look it up in
husband.
post. I was right here. I looked up these laws, and apparently they predominantly focused on married women not being able to take out debt in their husband's names without their husband's permission, because that's what you're doing when you're taking out debt as a married person. It's actually quite wild that they were repealed. However, I will note the reason they were repealed is because many banks and states used these laws to deny widows and women before marriage the ability to take out bank loans without a male co-signer like a father. And so they did lead to sexism, but they were created for very sane reasons. But I think it might have been because I do not think, like, for example, I'd be mortified if you went and took out like a loan in
No,
our family
honestly,
name.
and that's super evil and bad. And like, yeah, I mean, I it is kind of odd because I don't know
No,
if
I
like
can take out a credit card and you can
and
without my knowledge right now. That's
they
odd.
don't check my credit too. Because I thought that like when you get married, you kind of get saddled with your partner's like
You
that
get
can
saddled with their debt, but not necessarily their credit score, is my understanding.
So if you try to apply for a mortgage, so let's see, hold on. Like if I had terrible credit and you had an amazing credit score and you applied solely for a mortgage without me, you'd probably be able to get it. Because then it shouldn't matter.
I don't know. I mean, like the banks probably have a way around this, you know.
Yeah,
but
whatever. Anyway, though, I just like my whole view on feminism has been destroyed, and it's all the fault of some feminist who decided to do a lecture on Margaret Atwood and make it free on Audible Plus. So thank you, ma'am. You lost one.
An anti-feminist because you think that feminists are fundamentally anti-women.
Right, but it's their nature. This is the scorpion and the
scorpion
frog.
on the log. Yes, you never put a woman alone in a room with another woman.
So she's like, trust me, bro. I will carry you across this river. I will make you better.
But what's funny, that's not like a modern feminism problem. It's an always feminism problem. Yes. Feminism has always been about women.
Well, but I mean, it makes sense evolutionarily as well. I mean, what have women historically needed to make sure they have? They spend immense periods of their life very vulnerable, either pregnant or with a newborn. They need resources, and resources are limited.
This is the anti-bear in the woods argument. You're like, I would only feel good if I ran into a man in the woods, not a woman. Because statistically, the woman is more likely to.
She will feed me to the bear or the predatory man. Either way, I'm not good with her. It's not safe.
But yeah, fun argument. I love it, Simone. You are a genius and a great wife. And I think for tonight, just reheat the meal from the other night in the microwave. It doesn't matter, or reheat it.
Well, I can make gyoza too. I don't have a fever right now, so I can function. And you got me vitamin water, so I'm going to chug one of those. It will give me the energy I need to power through this. Are you going to
make good gyoza or bad gyoza?
Good gyoza, not burnt.
No, but the fancy kind that we get at the Asian store.
Yeah, we only have the stuff from the Asian store.
Okay, good, because you try to sneak in some other stuff.
No, I didn't. But you did buy Bibigo gyoza from the store, and you didn't like it as much. Do you not want me to make that at all anymore? Because that's what's
Simone. We tried to get something new this time. Can we try whatever the new one was?
Yeah, but I don't have a lot of room in the small freezer where I have already opened bags, and I opened that bag.
Okay, then just use the bag that you already opened, and we'll finish it.
You got to power through it, Malcolm. You bought it.
Gyoza, I didn't like it last time.
Well, you were just like, this isn't as good as the other kind, but then you went and bought totally different kinds anyway, but you have to go through a bag before you open a new bag.
I understand. Thank you.
You know, someday our kids won't only eat dinosaur nuggets and baby pizzas, and they can actually help you go through the foods that you don't want to eat anymore. They'll actually eat gyoza, or who knows, even, you know, some of the curries we make. But right now, they refuse anything remotely flavorful.
You are the true queen bee of this family.
Because I slap everyone down.
You never do. You only work to uplift everyone. That's the thing. Women work to uplift their families. It's not like women only pull people down. Like, women have a vested biological interest in uplifting their families.
Well, and there are many anecdotal examples of amazing female mentorship and mother-daughter relationships. And look, Malcolm, your mother, I mean, she may have called me a vortex of failure, but she also mentored me a great deal.
Vortex of failure is one of the best insults I have ever heard.
Yes, I mean,
she's so vivid and illicit. Like,
but she did far more extremely kind, high investment, high effort things to me than she ever did in the form of insults and threats and derogatory remarks and calling me a cunt. So I liked those things too, because they just brought drama to the table. It was like
women do help their families.
They do. And like, I'm so grateful.
Families,
yeah.
They have nothing to help. And so they just tear down all of society.
Yeah, I mean, this is intrasexual competition. And we have to remember this competition, what is it about? It's about getting resources for yourself and your family.
Right. But the point being, when you do not have a family and you are only on intersexual competition.
Yeah, then it's just pointless and for me. Yeah, there's no one who gets to benefit.
Tear down society. Tear down society for the sake of tearing down society.
But yeah, actually, you're right, though, that like women are very, very good at enriching their own. Like if you are in the sphere of a woman, you are safe, but that is not going to happen in the workplace.
No. But they do that by destroying everything else, which is, I think, why the Progressive Party has become so toxic. Is because I'm a party that's dedicated to the destruction of society. I love you so much, Simone.
I love you too. I think I hear Octavian rummaging around downstairs. So down we go.
By the way, Simone, the woman, so there was a big woman who is running this like program to try to get men to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
She got back to us in an email.
I said 1,000 to 1 choice or odds. That is insane. With willingness or just? With
I don't know. I haven't read it. You can read it now. I'm too. I don't like reading like high stakes emails like this.
Looks like she responded only to you.
Oh, she responded only to me. That really sucks. Okay, so I have to actually read it this time. All right. Well, let's see. I will try to read. Oh, God, she thinks she has nothing to do with it.
Oh, so you just got the wrong person. Okay, so my odds.
No, it's the right person. She just thinks that because I mentioned the project, I thought she had something to do with it.
No. You can look more into it. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I need to pick some up. Whoa! Here's. Whoa! It's floating! I made her get some sticks. This is long enough. It touched the leaf. Oh